The ego is the system that runs your sense of self. It is made out of thought patterns, emotions, and behavioral loops, and the stories that try to hold it all together. Left unchecked, it creates endless existential searching, chronic disconnection, and the persistent sense that something is wrong. The goal of my videos is clarity, to see your identity and its contradictions for what they are, named precisely, to finally understand what it is that we're all running away from. The idea of hope has come up a lot lately by both my clients, both by people in the comment section, and people I talk to daily. And the feeling of hopelessness is pretty much pervasive in all age groups and generations. And the feeling of hopelessness feels very objective. Like you're not supposed to be hopeful if the situation is bleak, because then you're just going to get disappointed. And here you already can reveal the mechanism of what hopelessness really is. And it's kind of like the consequence of disappointment. And if you get disappointed long enough, then why should you be hopeful? You should just be disappointed or never be hopeful again, so you can never be disappointed. And there's something very difficult to parse here, because there's deep spiritual wisdom in hopelessness. Like, in a way, hopelessness is the goal. You're not supposed to be hopeful. If you're hopeful, then in a way you are attached to a future that you cannot really be certain of. Like, you cannot guarantee that this future will happen. And it is because of this reason that hopelessness as like a neutral idea, like to not have hope, is kind of healthy, because you do not get this mind into this weird mechanism where it just wants something all the time that it then cannot get. And also, acting from a position where you don't have expectations about the future is generally way better than acting from this neediness for something to become true. On the other side of the coin, real hope is kind of the driving force of all of humanity. And if you're truly hopeless for the future, then you can just let everything rot. Powers that be that just enslave everybody will dominate the world, and suffering will keep increasing. So as a real human spirit, you kind of must cling to some notion of hope. Like, there must be something better at store, both for society and for you as a person. And to believe that this is possible is one of the most important things you can do for yourself. And you can also call that hope. So in this way, you can see that both hope does exist and also kind of doesn't exist. And it depends a lot of how you associate yourself with these or with this word. And there comes a point in everybody's seeking journey where hopelessness is the thing that you must dive deeper into. There's no other route around it. And the difficult thing about this is that hopelessness is exactly the point where you want to give up, where there's nothing that makes sense anymore. And then what does it mean to dive deeper into hopelessness? This sounds very abstract, right? But you can only feel hopelessness in a negative valent coded way. Like, if it feels negative to sense this feeling of hopelessness, if you're clinging on to hope. This means that you are not just experiencing hopelessness, you are experiencing the rejection of hope. And the more you experience the rejection of hope, the more hopeless you're going to feel. And it's very paradoxical, right? Because you would assume that if you feel hopeless, that there's no hope inside. But it's more likely that you have a deep, deep desire for some better future, some better alignment with existence. And you have been so disillusioned for this to be possible that you reject this desire full-heartedly. You reject this desire so much, in fact, that all you can perceive is hopelessness and nihilism and meaninglessness. This is true for all of these other terms, right? Like meaninglessness and this sense of like apathy towards life. It's always a repression of the other side of the coin. This also means that we then have to go back to the other side of the coin, and to go back from hopelessness into this like healthy framing of hope that I just mentioned. You kind of must look at the hopeless nature within yourself for what it is really like. And this is what it means to move through your hopelessness. To actually look what is true about the perception of hopelessness. Because hopelessness kind of must be an illusion too. Because instead of predicting an outcome, you're predicting the absence of an outcome. And none of it can truly be predicted. You might believe that you have so much experience now where something failed that you now know for certain that it won't work the next time. But this is wrong. And there are millions of examples where this doesn't pan out this way. The future will always be uncertain. And then hopelessness gets clinged onto as a sort of shield and protection from the possibility that you might actually be wrong about your own hopelessness. Because if you have been hopeless for a long time and there is actually a solution to the issue, then what does it mean about the time you've wasted just not doing anything about it? If there is some next step that you know that you could take, then it shouldn't matter if you are hopeful or not hopeful. What matters is that you can take the action for the next step to bring your life at least 1 centimeter closer to whatever you want it to be, and to find what are the levers you can really pull to maybe shift something without any expectation. And if you have no expectation, then you kind of have a certain balance between this realistic pessimism maybe, and also the honest optimism that there's something that could actually change that you're not aware of. This works in all areas in life, and is important for almost everybody, right? Like if you're stuck in a career where you're unsatisfied and not knowing where the future looks like, if you're worried about the political climate and just the trajectory of humanity, like if you're all doomed or not, in the own spiritual work, if you wonder if you can ever find existential peace again, if you wonder if awakening is really real and you can be free of suffering, and that self-realization is like an honest thing, that you can actually remove the suffering of the ego or not. Like all of these things are like small beliefs that we have deep inside of us that control our relationship to our future and to our sense of hopefulness or hopelessness. The only thing that is extremely important is to not fall into dual thinking. Because if you don't fall into dual thinking, then the duality between hope and hopelessness stops mattering. You only know what is the next step that you can do, and then you just do it. But for you, in order to do it, I guess you need some sort of potentiality that it can change. And the difficulty about hopelessness is that this potential seems like absolutely inaccessible. Like you're so convinced that this potentiality doesn't exist. Now, what do you do against that, right? And there's what I mean with attacking the hopelessness directly, to actually focus on the belief structures that have created this sense. And this deconstruction of these belief structures is what my ego architecture audit is about, and how it exactly functions. Like step by step, you can find in the PDF in the link in the description. The deconstruction of belief patterns will reveal to you how much hopelessness must be a lie, how much it is a learned behavior built through an architecture of a lifetime. And then through the building of this ego architecture, you construct a reality model in which this is true for you. And this also shows how malleable existence is and how malleable human perception is. There's not really one singular truth, but seemingly infinite configurations in which a human can perceive reality. And if you build a mind that is fueled with nihilism and meaninglessness, and you keep reiterating things that point to the fact that there's no point in life, then first it is very important to also understand why this is true for you, right? It's not just, oh, this is all delusion, this is all like your ego imagining. No, there are like good reasons for this to be the case. And then see why is it true, and then honor why is it true. And in deep spirituality, the pointlessness of existence is like a crucial point. The question is, why does it feel negative to you? Why is the truth something that hurts instead of just something that is accepted or even liberating, or hell, even positive? And then from there, you then can honestly look at the ways in which hope is also a reasonable position from which to look at existence, because nobody can actually tell you what is going to happen, and this nobody includes yourself. All you can do is increase likelihoods of something to change. And whatever tiny step you take, it doesn't matter how tiny it is, increases the likelihood by a little bit. And this is just like maths. It's just simple mathematics. The more likely you try something, the more often you try something, the more likely is that it's going to work. Like the more often you say a sentence, the more likely is that you're going to say the sentence right. If there is this deep impulse to reject what I'm saying, and this visceral like discomfort to what I'm saying here, then this shows what all of this hopelessness is really about, right? It is an attachment to negativity. It's the body having found a sort of local energy minimum for its own discomfort. And then moving out of it is actually also quite uncomfortable, because now you have to restructure whatever model your body has come up with. And in a certain way, the older you are, the more difficult it can seem like. But on another way, I would also say that especially in these spiritual matters, it is quite common that deep relief is at the other side of a lot of terror. And oftentimes we believe that things get like very, 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 very bad, and in order for them to recover, it's going to take the same amount of time. But sometimes it's really just something that goes to a certain point and then breaks, and then rather quickly fizzles off. Like just because you are like 15 years into depression doesn't mean it requires 15 years to feel good again. Especially in sort of ego dynamics, there are often certain clusters of emotions, clusters of thoughts and belief systems that once these clusters untangle, you often liberate a lot of emotion very, very quickly, and can very quickly shift your life and your relationship to your life. This is also why psychedelics have such an intense effect on people, because they shift their own architecture radically for like a short period of time that in the moment actually doesn't feel short at all. It feels like a lifetime. But then from there, the entire structure becomes malleable again, and it is easier to introduce new ideas. But this is not just true through psychedelics. It is true through any intense emotional experience that makes you look at the mechanism that is actually in front of you, like what is actually going on in your own conscious experience. And introducing energy to that field, energy to that system, is the way you kind of dissolve this solidity that is giving you these sensations. This is also called neural annealing by the Qualia Research Institute, which is the main mechanisms through which meditation changes you, because through the energy that you put in through concentration, you dissolve the ego patterns that keep narrating your life and causing the sense of solidity. And through concentration practices and silence and just feeling your stuff, you dissolve the patterns that normally keep firing. And you can also think about it in like a neurological level, right? Like a dopamine system that keeps firing to do the same action over and over again stops once it gets another focal point where it cannot follow its natural movement again. And then all it's left to do is to cease its function. And in a way, it has to die. It's like the neurons are the part that die whenever you let go of something. And this is true also for hopelessness. And this means that even if you let go of negative emotions, you might have to mourn them. And you might actually be quite distraught by how much you actually cling to all of the negativity, because negativity has a strong pull, man. Like there's something very addicting about being sad. There's something very addicting about being miserable. There's something about negativity itself that fuels us and gives us a stronger sense of identity, instead of letting go of that stuff and letting go of these narratives. Because if you let go of them, then what do you have left? You just have the raw emotion itself, the raw feeling itself. And then what else is there to do but to move through them?